Hey, everybody. Mark and I have over 20 years of experience as therapists and as addicts in long term successful recovery. We know better than anyone what works and what doesn't to break out of porn and sex addiction, heal betrayal trauma, and reclaim your relationship.
And we've poured all of our personal and professional recovery and healing experience into a first of its kind program for addicts, spouses, and couples. We call it Dare to Connect.
At least 4 times every week, we engage with you in real time, in the trenches, giving you the knowledge and the tools to take back your life and relationship.
Whatever else you've done on your journey for healing and recovery, you've never done anything like this.
Mark and I, we've made all the mistakes, so you don't have to. Don't reinvent the wheel.
We all know tomorrow never comes. Look, don't wait one more day to change. Claim your free 2-week trial today at daretoconnectnow.com.
Hey, everybody. I'm Steve Moore.
And I'm Mark Castleman.
We know the pain and heartbreak of porn and sex addiction.
And we know the triumph of breaking completely free.
Every day, we help our clients find hope and healing.
Join us in the fight to take back your life, your marriage, and be stronger than ever.
This is the PBSE Squared podcast. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the PBSE podcast today. We are coming at you with episode 243 today. It's wild that we're on 243 and we're coming up on our 5-year anniversary. We're going to have to find something cool to do about that. It's going to be good, but this is a good episode. We've talked a little bit about this subject before, but not quite in this way. We had a really good submission by a partner. As you can see, the title is "My Porn Addicted Partner Has ADHD. He insists I must manage his recovery for him to succeed. Is this correct or is this right?" And so, this comes to us from a partner. I'm just going to go ahead and read the whole thing. We won't take very long with this, but she's very descriptive, and we know that many of you can connect with this. Mark and I face this in our clinics on a pretty regular basis as well. So I'll read this and then we'll jump right in. Hello, Mark and Steve. First of all, I want to thank you for all the work you do and the hope you inspire in those of us here fighting this battle. This partner, we think, the very kind words that you're sharing. Thank you very much. The education you provide and the way you have shared your personal journeys is truly remarkable. So thank you. You are most welcome. Thank you for the compliment. My husband and I have been friends for close to 20 years, in a relationship for 7, and married for 3. He has been addicted to pornography for most of his life, close to 40 years. I started to suspect something a couple of weeks before we got married, and he finally confessed his addiction about 6 months later. We now both have CSATs, or certified sex addiction therapists, that work together as a team, which we've got to say, we really commend. That is rare, but that is kind of like the optimal scenario.
Yeah, that's like, wow.
Yeah, that's really, really cool where they're collaborating. And we've been seeing them for about 18 months. My husband has been doing fairly well, or so I thought, but I have just found out that he has been in a relapse for a couple of months. I am, of course, hurt and angry that he would go back down this road after all the work, time, and money that has been invested in his recovery. He very much wants to get back on track, but feels that I need to take a much larger role in his recovery. So this is where we get to the issue. I should mention that my husband is diagnosed with ADHD. For this reason alone, he feels he needs me to essentially manage his recovery. If he has homework, so like homework from therapy, I should sit down and do it with him. Set up our weekly check-ins and give him reminders about them. Follow up that he has made therapy appointments. Continually check in with him that he is not using porn, etc. I do not want to have to manage all this for him. He feels that if I truly care and support him, I will understand that because of his ADHD, this is what he needs in order to be successful. I do know that it is not the wife's place to do this typically. Is there ever a time, for instance, when ADHD is present, that this could be a healthy, successful approach to both partners' recovery? Thank you so much. Wow, lots there, and lots of feelings on our end about this. And
we have a lot to say about this.
Absolutely.
I think the first thing that we need to say is, well, first of all, we have tremendous empathy for all those who are challenged by ADHD. I have experienced some of that myself. My wife and I have raised 2 of our 5 sons have had it severely. And so we have a lot of experience with that personally. And Steve, you and I, we were talking about this before we started the podcast today. We would say that the majority of our male clients over the last 20 plus years have either been diagnosed with ADHD or have some form of it on a spectrum, at least if not diagnosed, the definite symptoms of it. Most of our clients fall into that category.
I would say out of 10 men that I've worked with over the years, on average, out of every 10, conservatively 7 to 8
I would absolutely
exhibit those same symptoms. They may not qualify for a full diagnosis, but they absolutely do exhibit the symptomology and I mean, really, I am not yet aware, but I really hope that somebody, I'm probably not myself, I'm not a very good researcher, but somebody prominent there really should be some studies done about it, because the link is huge.
Well, and just the increase of ADHD,
Yes.
diagnoses and symptoms, especially with our very tech heavy, distracted information and interactions technologically at 1,000,000 miles a second. ADHD has become a more pervasive issue because of the very culture that we're in.
Yes.
I mean, make no mistake. Now, we need to be clear. This is not an episode about the intricacies of ADHD and how it relates to addiction and recovery. We covered that in a more thorough, albeit basic sense back in episode 210. So if you want some details about ADHD as it relates to addiction and recovery, go back to episode 210. But we decided this episode was going to be more about what it means to be truly proactive and lead out in one's own recovery. And having said that, I want to be very clear that this is not to come down on those who have these issues. Quite the opposite.
Yeah.
Speaking today, I am a person that has struggled my entire life with some really significant and severe mental illness issues. I've talked about in PBSE before. My whole family suffers with tremendous mental illness, many generations into the past, both with addiction and all kinds of, clinical depression, anxiety disorders, bipolar, Tourette's syndrome, ADHD. And I've suffered with a good number of those in my own personal life. So I have great empathy for all those listening who have a combination of mental illness and addiction. Because let me tell you, in some ways, that is the definition of hell. Because what's one of the great challenges, Steve, we've been faced with this our whole careers, and I faced it personally. What comes first, right? The chicken or the egg? Did I have mental illness first, which then moved me into addiction to cope and soothe and medicate and escape? Or did I get into addiction, which then triggered mental illness symptoms and issues?
Yeah.
Which came first?
Yeah, well, we do talk about it often, and there's no one way to answer that. But I would say, I always say this, I would suspect that in most of the cases that I've worked with, and me personally, this would definitely reflect that. I think it was both.
I would agree.
Right. Very much an interplay off of one another.
Yep.
Right.
For sure. And I would think in some ways, the mental illness, the abuse, the trauma, the issues from childhood definitely came before the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, unless I have a few clients sometimes where you can trace the addiction way back to early pre-adolescence, but I would say that that's not typically common. There was usually something that preceded it, right? And so I think one of the hardest parts for me, in fact, this was horrendously hard, was how do I, as an individual that has these legitimate mental illness issues in my past, how do I become honest about that and vulnerably face what it means to act on my side of the street and my recovery with all those other factors present? What does it mean to lead out and be proactive? How do I, as someone suffering from mental illness issues, and this guy with ADHD, how do I balance the realities of all that, the limited capacities? How do I have self-compassion? How do I learn what it means to be account-able and response-able when all those factors are present? That
Yeah.
is a horrendously hard issue that I have struggled with most of my adult life. How does Mark get into the balance space of knowing what's real, what's not, where's my responsibility, where isn't it? How much of this is mental illness over which I have little control? Where do you get into how do you walk that tightrope?
Yeah.
And I feel for these guys.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, it's because we find ourselves, so many things bring us to the addiction table, right? So many different factors, like you said. It's everything from genetics to background to trauma to, curiosity,
Exposure to environments, to
all sorts of
peers, to
things, right?
everything, right?
Everything. And, you know, w- and we know that for many of you, I mean, we know that everybody kind of comes from a different spiritual framework and whatever, but I will tell you that this is one of the many reasons why I feel the research shows. I don't feel that the research shows because the research does, but I feel that this is one of the reasons why 12 step can be so effective.
Yeah.
Because when you look at, for example, just step one of any 12-step program, right? What does it talk about? I really love the approach at the beginning because it's all about what? Division of responsibility. And it starts to teach us what we would call accurate accountability,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which that is something sorely lacking in society as a whole, but definitely is something that we as addicts tend to really struggle with is, like you said, where does the other person or where does the stuff I can't control end? Where does this begin? And 12 step says essentially, right, step one, we came to realize that we were what? We were powerless over the behaviors that we were addicted to and that our lives because of it had become unmanageable. Now, I think that that's really important because it's already sowing the seeds of what we would call healthy accountability because it's saying right out the gate, right? It's not saying I'm not responsible, nor is it placing blame on anyone else. It's saying that right now the way that I am trying to manage is unmanageable.
Right. And that really became so and I resisted that concept, not just from 12 step, but from a lot of clinical side that I was participating in, professional colleagues and mentors that were much farther down the road than me and started to talk to me about, hey, Mark, right, you need to recognize that, quote, the way you've been trying to do this all these years or decades, while very brave and
And well
courageous,
intentioned.
well intentioned, commendable even,
Yes.
you at the place where you're willing to finally face that that's going it alone and doing it my way is not working.
Yep.
And man, that
Absolutely.
was hard for me to get to that place, to let go of that, to surrender to that fact.
Absolutely. Right. And there's so much tied to that because part of the accurate accountability piece is learning to work out where is the healthy guilt and where is the toxic shame.
Yes.
Right. So much of what makes this overwhelming is that many of us look at ourselves, quote, as a bad man trying to become good versus a sick man trying to become well.
That's such an important distinction.
Right. And so there's this,
Yeah.
and it feels very overwhelming when we look at ourselves and we say, for example, through any paradigm, ADHD, that's what we're talking about today. Well, ADHD is me,
Yes.
right? How do I beat something that is me?
Right.
As opposed to being able to look at myself and say, you know what, I carry many attributes, right? Some of them are really positive, some of them not so much. And all of those things, right, in tandem kind of come together and form the great, amazing, mysterious, frustrating, but good person that is Steve, right? Or
Well,
Mark.
and so the thing that we start to face it, and some of it's self-compassion, some of it is standing up to really look at the reality of who I am in my totality in the mirror.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I have mental illness, I have trauma, I have abuse, I have all this stuff in the mix. What does that mean? It means that this isn't just simple addiction,
Yeah.
that I was exposed to sexual stimuli, I discovered the pleasure cycle, and I got hooked, just seeking pleasure. There was much more to it than that for me. And that means that now there's more moving parts to my recovery, possibly
Yes.
than the typical guy.
Absolutely. Right. Good and good. And this is where I really like that powerless piece that we were just talking about, because what the 12 steps teach is that I am powerless over the addiction. And so then it brings to mind the inherent question, well, what do I have power over then?
Yep. Does
Right.
that
I
just
don't
mean
have
I'm totally powerless, period?
correct.
Or
Or
I
is
have to
it
start
just
now.
around this, right? And
Yep.
this is where I think we're going to start getting into the, if we're talking about, education, resources, and mentality right now, tools. As an addict, right? As an addict even as an addict in long-term recovery, I am not nearly so prideful as to admit that even after nearly 10 years of sobriety, if I stuck myself in the wrong environment for the right amount of time under the right circumstances, it is not a question of if I'd probably act out again. It's probably just a question of when.
Right.
Right.
I,
And I don't know how long that would be, days, weeks, months, years, I don't know. But at some point, those, those, those neuro connections that I made during those old addiction days, which we know the science tells us they may atrophy over time, but they do not go away.
right.
Right. If I were just to let go of all that, there's a very real chance that I could go back there. Good recovery does mean employing tools that help to counter, attack, and work on, like, for example, sobriety itself as a right in the moment. But so much of important critical recovery, and this is kind of driving home now to this guy's point, is I may be addicted to that. So what am I not addicted to? Well, I'm not addicted to not making appointments, right? I'm not addicted to not trying to familiarize myself with the calendar app on my phone. I'm not addicted to not writing things down or trying new forms of organizing myself or whatever the case may be, right? I'm using tools that, like, we're going to talk about a little bit more here
Yeah.
with
And
the ADHD piece, right? I'm recognizing if I try to just manage my schedule on my own because of the ADHD, right? Much like an addiction, the ADHD is a condition itself that I cannot alone manage.
correct.
So then the question becomes, well, so what things can I employ,
Yep.
right, and bring on board to begin to combat that in an indirect way rather than just trying to remember better,
Because
right?
here's what happened to me. And I sense, and I again, we don't know this guy,
No.
but I sense because I did this, I either have to be able to manage it all by myself or somebody else has to manage it.
Mm,
There's no in between.
yeah.
And what was so hard for me to learn, but critical to learn was, and Steve, you and I both do this with clients that have this issue and similar issues, because most of them do. What do we talk about? You need to decide if you're going to now stop, quote, doing it your way solo.
Yes.
And are you going to begin to identify your challenges or handicaps or blind spots,
Mhm.
and then purposely call upon outside resources, which are not just people, but outside resources that I need to bring into play to to fill those gaps, to right to take up those handicaps that I know I have. That doesn't mean I'm a loser or weak or a flawed piece of garbage or whatever. It just means we all have weaknesses. We all have things that we're not as strong as in other areas. So, for example, what do guys say to you and me, Steve, all the time? Mark, I just can't remember. I
Yes.
just forget.
Mhm.
I just can't keep track of it. Okay, that I don't hear. Sometimes it's an excuse, but much of the time it's just basically something that I legitimately struggle with as a diagnosis, or my brain doesn't work quite right in certain ways, or whatever it is. I can then say, well, somebody else has got to keep track of this, like my wife. Or I can
Mhm.
say, you know what? Knowing this about myself, I'm going to go out there and search for all the various tools, resources, and education that are available for a guy that has these challenges. And I'm going to put those into play.
Yes.
So, what does that look like for us with clients? Using my phone that's been part of my addiction, using it now to my advantage with pre programming in calendar items, alarms, processes. I know that I, for example, need to become a literal master of the routine, the pattern in my life. I need to become good. Steve, you and I teach a lot of our clients with ADHD issues, piggybacking. What do you
Mm-hmm.
already do in your daily life that has become an automatic no think habit? Well, I won't go to bed without brushing my teeth. I would never think of that. That's disgusting. I never miss it. All right. What can we tie to that automatic habit that you're forgetting to do? Well, I don't check in
Absolutely.
with my wife. Well, you have a little sign on your bathroom mirror that says, hey, can't brush your teeth till you check in with your wife.
Mm-hmm.
That's an example of piggybacking. We
Absolutely.
could do a whole podcast on tools and resources and education for ADHD individuals of things they can put into place to fill these blind spots and make and support them in these handicaps.
Yeah.
I have a
Yep.
bad left knee. I can't walk very well for long periods of time. I could say, you know what, people, can't go walking with you, sorry, or somebody stick me in a thing and wheel me around, which might be necessary for some people. But what have I found? I found that sometimes I need to use a cane. And for a
Yeah.
guy, I don't consider myself to be old enough to use a cane. So out of the shame and embarrassment, I'm not going to use a cane. No one's going to see me using that. It's ridiculous. But I
Yeah.
use a cane for what? To fill in the gap of that particular handicap. Some days on a bad day with that knee, because I want to be able to participate. I want to be able to own my side of the street and do my work. So I put the cane in place.
Yeah.
I wear reading glasses because my eyes have become weak over the years because too much computer time that we're doing right now. So I could say, well, somebody else is going to have to read stuff to me.
Yeah.
No, I'm gonna get some reading glasses so that I can do my part and own my side of the street. So what is the
Absolutely.
side of the street for these individuals, which as I've said, I've faced a lot of this myself. What does that look like for us?
Well,
Right?
and it is about these tools, like Mark is saying, it's so critical. And I just want to point out one piece about that before we move on to other things is, I mean, you can't, those who are not watching this on YouTube after we get it edited and things, by the way, we are starting to, we don't have it quite done, but we're close to, we do have a YouTube channel, PBSC podcast, and you can listen to these podcasts all there. Soon we will have them edited or we will have episodes going forward, probably hopefully in the next month or so, where you can actually watch these live. So you can't see this, but I'm holding up my phone right here, right? This dang thing, how many ways has this gotten me and every addict probably listening in trouble, right? Everything from connecting with old affair partners to accessing porn to just zoning out to avoidance and escape to everything else, right? This thing has caused all sorts of problems. But that's just it, right? Our addiction has weaponized this thing in so many ways. What if we were to take this same necessity that has caused us so many problems and employ it for good? I
Yeah.
was telling Mark before the session today, my wife, she is very pregnant. We're 7 weeks away from a due date on our first baby. And she has, I did not know this, but apparently pregnancy brain is a real thing. And I have seen it
Oh yeah.
in action. My
Yeah.
wife works as a project manager by profession. She helps other people track their schedules for a living. And she has recently started to forget stuff that she would never in a million years forget. And so what does she do after like five? I was telling Mark, like between 5 p.m. and like when we go to bed, I kid you not, at least 4 or 5 alarms go off on her phone for different things because she has made the effort to put those things in. In other words, what is she recognizing? This is not normally something I would need to do or do if I was functioning optimally. Okay, there's the key word. But I've what? Accepted the fact that right now I'm not.
Right.
And so in the meantime, what do? I am utilizing tools around me. It's not Steve's job to track that schedule, nor would he be able to even if he wanted to. Right? This is still something that I can and ought to be doing because it's within my control. Now, again, like Mark said, one could say, well, damn it, I can't do this because I've always done it this way. It would be very easy for my wife to just sit down stubbornly and just be like, damn it, Steve, I used to remember all this crap. Now I can't. Now I have pregnancy brain. So you just need to do it for us.
Yeah.
She could do that.
I can't put alarms on my phone because I'll just ignore them and I won't even hear them and I won't pay attention to them because I'm too distracted.
Absolutely. Or she could give into the shame of that, right? Because
Yeah.
every addict, I think all addicts listening to this can resonate. And we really are, we're not mocking it all. We really do connect with it. I remember very distinctly one of the things that I had to grieve in addiction was the fact that I didn't feel quote unquote normal. I remember having a conversation with someone once with just sobbing, and I just said, I just want to be normal.
Seriously, when do I get to be normal?
I just want to be normal. I don't want to do all these safeguards when I, want to watch a movie. I don't want to take the time to take these extra steps. But everybody has deficits, guys. This happens to be ours. And we have the option to be able to push against that and fight it, or we can embrace and recognize that this is where some of my weaknesses lie, at least right now. And rather than saying, well, how do I formulate the world around me to accommodate me? We do what? We train ourselves to look at what is within my control.
Exactly. What can I do?
Can I do?
Where is my empowerment?
Yes.
Where do I have power? Where do I have choice? Right. We talk about moving from me to we, from
Yeah.
me to we. And I was in the me place forever. I didn't want to go to the we. And then we get into the we, calling on outside resources, looking at other, tapping into our outside support systems, which we hope this guy has a support group, a sponsor, people he can
And if
turn.
he doesn't, he should.
He needs to have it. It can't be just his wife.
Absolutely.
That's a recipe for burnout and just being toast for both of them. So getting into the place where I can, and this is where the honesty and the self-analysis really comes into play. What is the addict side? The addict slash mentally ill slash ADHD sufferer, fill in the blank. What is his side and what is the partner's side? There is a place for a partner's side. My wife has provided wonderful support for me in my mental illness and my struggles. I've had health crises over the years. She's filled a wonderful role in her side of that. And we've worked really hard in our collaboration. And this is what we really point out to this coupleship, our collaboration as a coupleship to determine in an authentic and healthy way what each of our sides are and what is the place where those two sides meet as a coupleship. What's that look like? Right? Am I open to that as an addict in recovery, as a guy healing from and managing mental illness? Am I open to really lead out and own what I can? And am I seeking to expand that, what I can own and what I can do? Am I expanding that on a regular basis? I will tell you, my capacities have grown over the years. I can do more than I used to. But if I had turned all of that over to my wife, I can tell you that my capacities would probably be where they were or less today.
Well, and I love what you're saying, Mark, because it is so true, right? If we should be uncomfortable, gentlemen, in this or addicts in this process every day.
Yes.
If we aren't stretching in some way or growing in some way, we are probably doing this process wrong or less right than we could.
Yeah.
Because there isn't that growth piece. Now, the other side of that, right, of course, is the argument to be made for the partner, right? The concepts that we're talking about today would be true in any capacity, but we cannot lose sight of the fact that we are dealing with a partner here who, through no fault of her own, at least as far as we're able to determine, is dealing with, like every partner who listens to this program, a series of events, a series of betrayals, a series of whatever, where she experienced the ultimate, I guess you could say, buyer's remorse, right? She signed up for one partner and, like many of ours, in many ways got a different version of that, or not the complete picture or a full understanding, and is experiencing, if not just in the past, in some cases very much in like this partner, an ongoing process where these things are happening.
Yeah.
And what we would say here is, not only is it essential for the growth for the addict to be able to take these things on where he can, part of him creating safety, part of him helping to support her at the baseline level, is to take ownership of the things that he can control.
Yes.
Right? Because she is healing from a process. Again, she is healing from collateral damage wounds. Right? It's like we set off a grenade. She lost a leg in the process. And we're looking at them and saying, well, you may have lost a leg, but I feel like I'm a paraplegic. So what are you complaining about? Right? Too often we addicts, we lose perspective on the reality of the situation, where at a bare minimum, gentlemen, we need to be creating an environment that primes a partner for safety and growth, and to heal from the things that we have done to them. Because as we talk about in here, whether we did it intentionally or not is immaterial to the fact that trauma is a one-way street.
Absolutely.
And we can't undo what we did, no matter how much we want to. We can create the right growth environment and create the right medium and put the supports in place. And we need to be doing that, because she, unfortunately, is the one that's going to have to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting with the healing.
Well, and I'll tell you, one of the things that was really hard for me, that took a long time to get in touch with, I was so buried in my own legitimate mental illness issues I was completely overwhelmed by my addiction. I was hunkered down in my own stuff fully and completely. And what I had very big difficulty getting in touch with was, what was all of this like for my wife?
Mm.
What was she going through with regard to her betrayal trauma? What resources within her own mind and body was she having to expend in order to deal with the fallout and the shock and the betrayal of all of this? How much did that overwhelm her with just having to deal with her own issues because of what I had done? And with all of that, and managing our family and taking care of our kids and having a job at time, with all of that, I was then piling on top of her all my stuff. You got to show up for me. You got to be there for me. I have mental illness. I have all these issues. I have this stuff. I need you. I greatly discounted and under what's the word? I had to really come to a place of mindfulness where I was willing to see what this all meant for her, how heavy this was, and how much was I going to throw onto her backpack that was already overloaded. I had to really get to a place where I was willing to open myself to that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Absolutely. And it is a lot of work, guys. And again, the idea, and as we talk about this so often, we would not expect anyone listening to this podcast, be it the husband here who's the subject of this as we wrap up or otherwise, to fix these things in a day.
No way.
There is a process here. But to answer this partner's question, I cannot fathom a world. This is just Steve's opinion. I cannot fathom a world in which it would be appropriate for a partner under any circumstance or mental health diagnosis. I don't care what it is, for a partner to own things in the way that is being described here.
Oh,
One, because it's not her responsibility, and two, frankly, because it's not possible. She can't do the work for you.
no.
She can't. My wife can't do the work for me. Neither can Mark's for him. We have to pick up the sword. We have to fight the fight. And again, we live in the most technologically advanced society ever. God knows it's caused us a lot of problems with our addiction. Leverage the tools at your disposal. There are 1,000 ways to be reminded or prompted or guided in a daily schedule.
There are so many resources for people with ADHD because it is such a pervasive, common diagnosis. You could spend hundreds of hours exploring all the resources available for ADHD. I'm not exaggerating.
It's true. It's true.
Huge.
And it may be some other issue, right? If for example the symptoms are really this extreme, let's say that let's take this at face value and say he's not really playing a victim here. If it really is this extreme, if it hasn't happened already, then there needs to be a jump in with medication management, because clearly what's happened, if the symptomology is this severe, we need a medication change. This is way beyond what you should be experiencing if properly medicated with ADHD.
Exactly. So that absolutely can be a part of it.
But just one area, right? But even then, whose responsibility is that, right? Ours. Well, to make the appointment, to set the reminder to make the appointment, to set the reminder to go to the appointment, to whatever.
In my past, my wife did try to manage a lot of this stuff, and I'll tell you what happened. She became absolutely exhausted, fatigued, and spent, and it pulled her away from other things that were crucial for our children and our home and our family. And I became less and less capable.
Yes.
The more I turned to her, the more weak I became. And I'm not saying that trying to get on everyone's case. I'm just stating a reality that
it's true.
I had to lean into the discomfort. I had to put in tremendous effort. It was damn hard. I'm just going to say it like it is. It was damn hard for me to establish all the resources, gain the skill sets and knowledge to fill the gaps on all these handicaps that I had in my life. But I can do what I do today because of years and years of being willing to open myself to obtaining the skill sets and then practicing with consistency and repetition till it's become second nature. And there's some things I can't approach life like other guys in some ways because it won't work for me. So I've learned to approach life in the ways that support and scaffold my weaknesses and my needs. And I used to resent that, yearning one day to be a normal guy, in quotes. And I had to just let all of that go and just take it for what it is.
Who knows what I will be tomorrow? But today I am who I am today.
Yeah.
And that's all I can operate with.
That's it.
Well, guys, we are over time. We appreciate you listening. Sorry about the length of this. We try to keep these under 30 minutes. We got extra passionate today, but we love and appreciate all of you so much. And thank you for your patronage. We are poised here in about a month to hit 1 million downloads on this podcast, which I don't think we have to tell you, given the niche nature of the subject matter. I mean, we will never be a Joe Rogan, or would we want to be? But hey, Joe, if you're listening, we say hi to you. But he's an interesting character, but I love Joe. Anyway, love the fear factor. All that being said, we love answering these questions. We always have a backlog, in this case 2 to 3 months of time where we can respond to these questions. And I know we've heard from more than one of you guys. It just takes so long to hear back from you. Lovingly, we would say, we understand. You don't need to wait. Come join us at our Dare to Connect program. If you like what you hear in the PBSE podcast, you will love Dare to Connect. We utilize the same, think of a podcast, but far more content on structured topics in a form where you can answer constant questions with every session, including at least one graphic, assignments, structure, group support, live interaction with other participants in the program.
5 times a week.
Right? Literally, guys, we would love to have you come join us for the cost of a couple of therapy sessions a month, for some of you, depending where you live in the country, 1 session a month, or one with the cost of 1 session. You can have access to 30 hours of content live, in addition to an ever-growing repository of advanced and basic courses that you have access to as well. So we'd love to have you come join us. Come check out the free trial at daretoconnectnow.com and grab that. We would love to take you on a journey and level up recovery wherever you're at. Dare to Connect has literally worked for hundreds, if not thousands of couples by this point, and can absolutely take you to the next level wherever you find yourself.
Yeah. Love to see you in D2C.
Absolutely.
All right. Hey, thanks for being with us, and we will pick things up in our next episode.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Everything expressed on the PBSE podcast are the opinions of the hosts and the participants and is for informational and educational purposes only. This podcast should not be considered mental health therapy or as a substitute thereof. It is strongly recommended that you seek out the clinical guidance of an individual qualified mental health professional. If you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, self-harm, or a desire to harm others, please dial 911 or go to your nearest emergency room.